So hi, everybody. Thanks for joining our open teleconference webinar today. I'm Nettie Legassi. I'm the Associate Executive Director at NISO. Very happy that you've joined us. And typically, NISO has an open teleconference once a month to talk about one of our projects. And it's very exciting today. This is our first open webinar. So it's a kind of a new format for us. Maybe, next month we'll probably have a teleconference, but we can certainly look into this format going forward. And it's nice to be able to share slides with you and have a conversation. But one thing I want to talk about regarding our open teleconferences that I hope will extend to the webinar format, the meeting. This is a Zoom meeting. We hope that you will talk to us, and it's meant to be a very informal format to encourage dialogue between those who are involved in different projects and those who are consuming the projects. So we're happy that you're here and hope that you will be able to ask questions. Our speakers today, Gaëlle Béquet, the director of the ISSN International Center, and Martha Lovvoll, the senior manager, operations and communication at Wiley, will be presenting slides and also available to receive your questions. We are recording today's webinar meeting, and it's going to be recorded and we'll post it on the website for people who can't join, but we will also at the end of the conversation turn off the recording. So if you have a question that you don't want to be recorded for whatever reason, there will be an opportunity for that. And there will also be an opportunity at the end of the session for you to ask any questions about NISO in general that you might have. You're muted by default. We ask that you do remain muted if you aren't actually speaking, just to cut down on background noise. And that's something that we'll be watching. And I think that's the basics for the housekeeping. So very happy that you're all here. And without further ado, I hope that Gaëlle and Martha will introduce themselves and take it on. Thank you, Gaëlle and Martha.
Thank you, Nettie. Martha, can I start or just
Sure.
so, I'm Gaëlle Béquet. I'm based in Paris. I'm the director of the ISSN International Center, and we've been involved with transfers since 2018 when the transfer alerting service was moved to the ISSN IC, but we'll talk about that a bit later. And thanks, Nettie, for setting up this webinar.
Thanks, Gaëlle. And I'm Martha Lovvoll. I represent John Wiley & Sons on the Transfer Standing Committee. I'm a senior manager in operations and communications, and my focus in my role is on journal transitions in and out of Wiley, as well as other changes such as flipping to open access, journal name changes, and things of that nature. So I'm going to kick off the presentation. Next slide. So what is transfer? The origins of transfer are with the Transfer Code of Practice. It's a voluntary code for journal publishers that outlines best practices for transferring and receiving journals. The code is a NISO Recommended Practice, and that means that it meets NISO standards, and as well as ensuring that it serves communities other than just publishers. Transfer is governed by a standing committee of librarians, publishers, and other intermediaries. We do have representatives from organizations like EBSCO and also from learned societies. And one of the things that we really like to highlight about transfer in these sort of different outreach efforts is that it's more than just a code. It's also the transfer alerting service that Gaëlle's going to speak to later today. It's an ongoing program of outreach, education, support. We do have a pretty robust website that hosts FAQs, videos, and other resources. Members of the committee do represent transfer at different conferences throughout the year. And very importantly, we do publish, for those publishers that do endorse transfer, we publish contact information on our website. Next slide. So I became involved with the committee back in 2019. So I'm definitely not an expert on the history of transfer. So this is a true 10,000-foot view of the history. So I'm just going to highlight some of the really important things. So back in 2006, a working group was formed under the United Kingdom Serials Group. And in 2007, the first version of the code was released. Jumping ahead to 2009, we saw the creation of the Transfer Alerting Service with help from JISC. And jumping ahead to 2015, a bit of time has passed, but transfer became part of the NISO family at that time. And we also published version 3.0 of the code in 2015. Another important highlight was the migration of the Transfer Alerting Service to the ISSN International Center in 2018. And that was really a benefit of merging all the benefits of TAS with all the great information and resources that the ISSN Center provides. And then fast forward to today, 2022, the Standing Committee is now beginning work on version 5.0 of the code. Next slide. So this here is the current representation on the Transfer Standing Committee. We have two co-chairs, Sophia Anderton from BJU International and Linda Wabi from the statewide California Electronic Library Consortium. Right now we have 13 confirmed members that you can see here, but we are excited to announce that we're going to have some new librarian members joining in the coming weeks. So always good to expand sort of the reach of the different expertise in the committee. Next slide. So what are the benefits of being part of transfer? Some publishers transfer journals in and out of their business as a matter of course. Big publishers like Wiley, Elsevier, it's part of sort of our day-to-day business. While some publishers rarely encounter these activities, it's something that comes up once every couple of years. And we find that the code really helps to level the playing field by providing a succinct checklist for both transferring and receiving publishers. And that checklist includes what assets should be transferred and when those assets should ideally be transferred by. It also helps to ensure that important assets aren't overlooked in the transfers. But possibly most importantly is the code itself is not overly prescriptive. It allows publishers to accomplish these different activities in a way that works best for their business. Next slide. We also want to highlight the benefits for libraries, content aggregators, and other organizations. One of the main benefits is the Transfer Alerting Service. This allows users to receive alerts by email, by RSS feed, and as well as the ability to search the database of transfers. And the Transfer Alerting Service really, it rests on the idea that all the critical information is stored in one place. The URL, where you can find the content. It's surprising how that can get lost in a transfer. It clearly outlines when the transfer is effective, the year, the volume, the issue. You know exactly, okay, I no longer go here, I go there. It also outlines which publisher has the archive and will be serving perpetual access. And really that's to accomplish ensuring that access isn't unclear and that it's not interrupted. The only sort of bad thing that we hear, it's not really about transfer itself, but it's why are there so many publishers that don't participate? And we'll kind of outline some of the outreach activities that we do to try and get more publishers to participate. Next slide. So I thought it'd be good to highlight how the code gets updated. So year round, the Standing Committee collects and records comments and feedback as we receive it. So if we're approached by somebody either through email or at a conference, there's a process of us formally collecting and documenting that feedback. We also host an open commenting period to solicit comments and feedbacks from the public. And I think that period, I'm not sure, Nettie, you can correct me if it's still open or if it's closed.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute and the button did something completely different. It is not yet open. There's no open comment period right now. It's been a comment period for the members of the group.
Okay.
But we will have one during the update period.
Great, thanks for clarifying.
Yeah, and I will leave myself unmuted for the moment.
So then we're sort of in the midst of embarking on the formal process of revising the code. And this includes reviewing the comments, discussing the comments, and really deciding on what amendments need to be made to the code. After the code has essentially been finalized, it must be approved by NISO leadership. And then once that approved code is ready, it's published on the NISO site and it's promoted. And to ensure accountability to the public, we do follow up with all commenters on how their comment either was or was not addressed in the revised code. Next slide. So recent focus of the Standing Committee, there's an updated NISO transfer website with added resources, updated information that I mentioned earlier, FAQs, some videos. We did work to improve the FAQ with information about benefits for publishers, societies, libraries, and that's really key in getting publishers and other groups to sort of get on board with transfer. We published step-by-step instructions for receiving publishers to register their transfer titles at the ISSN portal through the transfer alerting service. And right now our current work is finalizing an update of publisher contacts and distributing credentials to those new contacts on how they access our resources. And right now we are right in the middle of reviewing comments and feedbacks in order to revise and release version 5.0 of the code. That's it.
Well, thank you, Martha. I think I can jump in and I will focus more on the, let's say, the technical process or of the transfer alerting service and focus on the way we work with transfer publishers. Actually, in 2021, we've worked with the Standing Committee to improve information on NISO website regarding the TAS transfer alerting service processes and practicalities, let's say. Regarding publishers, once they have endorsed the transfer code of practice, they are provided with credentials actually to register with the ISSN portal. And what you can see here on the slide is the publishers area on the ISSN portal. As Martha has just said, actually we are busy at the moment updating our contact information and checking whether transfer publishers actually have these credentials to make statements in the ISSN portal regarding transfers. So it's rather easy, let's say. That's also something which is described on the video that is available on NISO website. But once they are registered or signed in, publishers have to select an ISSN and complete information or complete a form to actually describe the title that they're going to receive, because they are receiving publishers we work with. And maybe you can move forward, Nettie.
Sure.
With the slide.
Yep.
So they sign in, and then the form to be completed contains information about the title which is going to be transferred. So this is really the first step, and this is done by the publishers. And next, what happens is that the information, no, that's great, thanks. Yeah.
Go ahead. Okay.
Yeah. Information which is provided on the ISSN portal is checked here by the staff at the ISSN IC, and then it is directly published on this website, which is the proper, let's say, transfer website or transfer alerting service. And this service is free, so you can get all information about transfers on it. As you can see, you can subscribe to an RSS feed to get emails when there is a transfer, and we'll come to that in a moment. And you have also a database that you can search to, for example, to locate a title which has been transferred recently, for example. So you can search by year and see all titles that have been transferred during a certain period. We'll come to that later. It's all about statistics. So about the mailing list, maybe you can move forward, Nettie. Yeah, it is still managed by JISC, actually. They were happy to keep it and to maintain this service for the community. And maybe it's a bit too small here, but if you go to JISC mail or this service and you look for transfer, you will see, you will find there information about all the titles which have been recently transferred. You can also search the archives and look at the title transfers, for example, 2 months ago or 3 months ago or last year. This is also something you can do on the transfer alerting system or service. So back to the database. Can you move forward, Nettie? Yeah. So you can search the database, as you can see, through transfer date or creation date, and you get a list of titles that were in a way declared or by receiving publishers in the ISSN portal. So this is a mirror of all the statements which are made via the ISSN portal. And if we move forward, you have also a few statistics about receiving publishers, also the dates at which the titles were transferred. And you can see in the statistics that most transfers happen at the end of the year. So look for that, in November, December. That's the period when most transfers occur, actually. There is also an API. Here is the info about the API. I've already mentioned the RSS feed. You can also search the database. So there are multiple ways to find information about the transfers. If we can move forward. About the revision of the transfer code, I think Martha has already touched upon that, but the idea is also to include information or to update the code to take into account transformative agreements, for example. Also deal with open access publishing commitments. Also, the idea is to be more specific regarding subscribing institution, describing what paid subscribers are. Maybe also emphasize or develop or improve information about access rights, and access to backfile content. And of course, work with downstream services to actually improve the information they handle. So here are a few links if you need more information or want to also get involved at one point with the revision of the code. So the group, you can find it on NISO Transfer Online. You have here the address, the transfer alerting service, and the code of practice. So please do help us, do comment, as we are, of course, eager to work with the communities, the library communities and the publishing communities on this project.
Great.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. I'm going to stop sharing and we'll move into the question and answer. If anyone has a question for Gaëlle or Martha, please feel free to unmute and ask it. Or you can type it in the chat, that's okay too. To get us started, I'll just ask Martha and Gaëlle, could you explain why did each of you decide to participate on the Transfer Standing Committee, and what do you get out of your time that you've willingly contributed to this work? Maybe Gaëlle, you first.
Okay, thanks, Nettie. Well, actually, I would say that freshness of data is paramount to produce a reliable register of serial resources. And through the transfer alerting service, we work with receiving publishers, getting fresh data on the ISN poll, and they help us in a way track changes when they occur. So it means also that we can provide this information, of course, on the TAS website, but also within our ISSN portal. So we get information, right from the start, right at the inception, let's say, or when the transfer occurs, which is really important for us. And this information, which is provided by publishers, is also double checked by the ISN network, by the national centers. When they receive information on their side as well, on their end, they can, in a way, validate the transfer in the ISN portal. So that's also, it's a feedback. We get some feedback from national centers, but we get, the fresh data from the publishers who participate in the transfer, or who have endorsed the transfer code of practice. And about my time, well, I would say my time on the standing committee is spent learning from my colleagues, I would say, and also adjusting our services to their needs. I've just said that in 2021, actually, we did a lot of work with Linda and with Sophia and the whole group to really enhance the communication, improve information on NISO website. So thanks also to you, Nettie, because that was also a lot of job on your end. So it's, well, I would say a learning and also, well, being aware of the requirements of the community.
Yeah, good. Martha, what about you? Why did you just decide to participate in transfer, and what do you get out of it?
Sure. So with my role at Wiley, I'm probably best positioned to represent Wiley on the standing committee, just in terms of my experience and the sort of the things that I do day to day. And it's, two things that I find that I get out of it. Probably most importantly is sort of positioning Wiley as representing best practice and trying to be sort of a good part of the larger community. Transfers are inevitable, and making sure that they're as painless as possible for Wiley, for other publishers, for the societies that we serve, I think is really important. And sort of echo what Gaëlle said, is that sort of engaging with and learning from the community. I get a lot from just hearing from the other publishers. Some of it's like, we're kind of all in the same boat. We face the same challenges, but I've learned new things that I think that Wiley can benefit from. And also just better understanding the rest of the community, like hearing directly from librarians about what is most important on their agenda and how they're sort of most impacted it's really helped broaden my perspective and helped in turn broaden Wiley's perspective.
Great. So we've got a few questions in the chat. Christine refers to one of the slides on the Why Revise Code slide. What does update downstream services refer to? Can someone talk about what is a downstream service and why do we need to communicate with them?
Sure. So that would encompass things like third-party indexers. For example, PubMed Central, they need to know whether or not where they're supposed to be receiving content from. Publishers in general take it upon themselves to make sure that paid services like that are updated, but there's a lot of different services, like really, really broad field of services that in a lot of ways need to self-serve. So that's where the transfer alerting service helps get that kind of information to them.
Anything to add, Gaëlle? Does that sound good?
No.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yep. And then
I
I think a question for you, Gaëlle. There's a person, Dorette from South Africa, sees that there's no representation in South Africa on the ISSN International Center and assumed the National Library would be the automatic contact point. What's the effect if there is no contact in a country on the ISSN International Center?
Well, thank you, Dorette, for the question. That has more to do with, of course, the regular business of the ISSN-IC, but I would just say that we've had contacts with the National Library of South Africa, but these contacts have not so far been, successful in creating a national center. And this in South Africa, this is the reason why we deal here at the ISSN-IC with publications from South Africa. So there are serial resources published in South Africa, of course, which are mentioned in the ISSN portal that you can find. And if there is a publisher, an endorsing publisher in South Africa, he will or she will be given the same credentials to access the database and be able to make statements regarding transfers using the ISSN database, of course.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from anyone in the audience? Otherwise, I've got one more for Gaëlle and Martha. How can a librarian or a publisher or anyone in our community best support the transfer activities in an ongoing way? It's great that everyone joined the webinar. We're so happy that you're here today, but what kinds of things could they do in their daily lives or in general? Any ideas?
Well, talk about transfer and talk about transfer with the publishers you're in contact with, I would say, and that would be my first recommendation. That's also the reason why we are here today for this webinar. Maybe use our tools, give us some feedback, also make the most of this future revision to share your concerns, share some advice, recommendation for the code of practice to be more efficient or be more, let's say, up to the point. And subscribe to the feed, of course, and use our tools. That would be really nice. That's the reason why they are. We are happy to manage them and to maintain them. It's for you to use them.
Anything to add, Martha?
Yeah, I would say providing feedback is really key about your experiences working with the code, especially anecdotal feedback of like specific examples of how something worked really well or didn't work at all. That really helps us approach the revisions to the code and make it more useful. I would also say, you know, talk about transfer, like it's okay to talk about transfer. And I've definitely made it front and center when I have conversations with other publishers that I'm actively working with, is this is what we need to do. And this is the transfer code, you know, the part of the code that aligns with that, just to sort of ensure that we're all sort of working from the same place. I think from my perspective, the code really provides like a great jumping off point for a conversation between two publishers.
That's a good point. Any other questions on the chat or voice? All right, I'm going to stop the recording